On a bright and sunny Saturday afternoon, the park buzzed with life. Families were scattered across the green space. Kids chased each other around, parents relaxed on benches, and birds chirped cheerfully in the background. Among them was 8-year-old Maya, a spirited little girl with a love for ducks and her favorite stuffed bunny named Snowflake. She sat in her wheelchair by the pond, giggling as she watched the ducks waddle along the water's edge. Her mother, Lisa, sat beside her, keeping a watchful yet relaxed eye on her daughter while scrolling through her phone. Maya had cerebral palsy, which made it hard for her to walk, but that never stopped her from enjoying life. She loved being outdoors, especially at this park where the air smelled fresh and the world felt big and full of possibilities. Today, she'd brought her binoculars to get a closer look at the ducks and her sketchbook to draw what she saw. Every few minutes, she would excitedly show Lisa her latest doodle, a duck with oversized feet, or a tree that looked more like a cloud than anything else. As they enjoyed their peaceful afternoon, an off-duty police officer named Greg strolled into the park. He wasn't there to relax. He seemed restless, scanning the area as if searching for something out of place. His eyes landed on Maya and Lisa sitting on a bench near the pond. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about them. They were just another family enjoying the day, but something about the sight bothered him. Greg walked over, his boots crunching against the gravel path. "You folks been here long?" he asked abruptly, his tone sharp enough to make both Lisa and Maya turn toward him. Lisa smiled politely, trying to ease any tension. "We've been here for about an hour," she replied calmly. "It's such a lovely day, isn't it?" But Greg didn't smile back. Instead, he crossed his arms and frowned. "An hour? That's a bit excessive, don't you think? This is a public park, not your personal lounge." His words hung heavy in the air, startling Maya, who clutched Snowflake tighter in her lap. Lisa blinked, taken aback by his rudeness. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, "but I didn't realize there was a time limit for sitting on a bench." Greg ignored her attempt to reason and glanced down at Maya, his expression unreadable. "What's wrong with her, anyway?" he asked bluntly, nodding toward the wheelchair. Lisa stiffened, her protective instincts kicking in. "She has cerebral palsy," she explained firmly, "but she's perfectly capable of enjoying the park like anyone else." The comment only fueled Greg's irritation. Before he could respond, another officer appeared nearby, drawn by the sound of raised voices. This second officer, known for his abrasive demeanor, joined Greg, and together they began circling Lisa and Maya like predators, sizing up their prey. People nearby started to notice, whispering among themselves and glancing curiously at the growing tension. What had started as a quiet, joyful afternoon was quickly turning into something far more unsettling. And no one, least of all Maya, understood why. As the second officer approached, the atmosphere grew heavier. The new arrival, Officer Mark, had a reputation in the community for being short-tempered and overly aggressive. He stood tall, his uniform crisp, but his demeanor cold. Without even asking what was going on, he chimed in with Greg, reinforcing the hostile tone. "What's the problem here?" he asked gruffly, though it was clear from his body language that he wasn't interested in hearing anyone's side of the story except Greg's. Lisa tried to remain calm, knowing that losing her composure would only make things worse. She took a deep breath and explained again, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. "We're just enjoying the park like everyone else," she said, gesturing toward the ducks and the peaceful scenery around them. "My daughter loves watching the animals, and we've been sitting here quietly." But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Greg scoffed, shaking his head, as if Lisa's explanation was absurd. "Quietly? You call this quiet? Sitting here for an hour, taking up space." His voice trailed off into a mutter, but the implication was obvious. To him, their presence was somehow inconvenient, disruptive even, though they hadn't done anything wrong. Officer Mark stepped closer, glancing at Maya in her wheelchair. Instead of showing any compassion or understanding, he smirked. "So is that chair really necessary?" he asked, his tone dripping with mockery. "Or are you one of those parents who thinks having a kid in a wheelchair gets you special treatment?" Maya's eyes widened in shock. Her small hands gripped Snowflake tighter, her knuckles turning white. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. She'd faced unkindness before because of her disability, but never had someone questioned whether her wheelchair was real. It felt humiliating, like they were dismissing her struggles and making her feel invisible. Lisa's patience began to wear thin. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her voice rising slightly. "Are you seriously questioning my daughter's condition? Do you have any idea how disrespectful that is?" She placed a protective hand on Maya's shoulder, glaring at both officers. "She uses that wheelchair because she has cerebral palsy. Would you ask someone wearing glasses if they really need them, or question someone using a cane?" The officers exchanged smug looks, seemingly unfazed by Lisa's frustration. "Relax, lady," Greg said dismissively. "We're just doing our job. You can't expect us to know every detail about your life." But his words carried a sting. They weren't there to help or understand. They were there to intimidate. By now, other people in the park had noticed the commotion. A group of teenagers nearby stopped tossing a frisbee to watch. A young couple holding hands paused mid-conversation, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. Even some children playing tag slowed down, sensing that something was wrong. The once happy hum of the park had turned tense, weighed down by the officers' hostility. One woman sitting on a nearby bench leaned over to her friend and whispered, "What's going on? Why are they picking on that little girl?" Her friend shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "I don't know, but it doesn't look right." Meanwhile, Maya stared down at her lap, trying to hold back tears. She hated feeling like she was causing trouble for her mom. All she wanted was to enjoy the ducks and forget about everything else. But the officers weren't letting up. They continued peppering Lisa with questions, demanding to see identification and implying that staying in the park for too long somehow made them suspicious. Lisa fumbled in her bag for her ID, her hands trembling slightly. As she handed it over, she couldn't help but notice how casually the officers handled the situation. As if harassing a disabled child and her mother was completely normal. The thought sent a chill through her spine. This wasn't just about them. It was about power, control, and prejudice wrapped up in uniforms. And worst of all, Maya was caught in the middle of it. While the tense exchange between Lisa, Maya, and the officers unfolded, a young filmmaker named Jordan sat quietly on a grassy hill overlooking the pond. Jordan had been visiting the park that day to gather footage for a documentary about how people interact with public spaces. With a camera in hand and an eye for storytelling, Jordan had already captured clips of families playing, joggers passing by, and ducks gliding across the water. But when the confrontation began, something shifted. At first, Jordan didn't think much of it, just another interaction in the park. But as Greg and Mark's tone grew sharper and more aggressive, curiosity turned into concern. Jordan zoomed in with the camera, capturing every detail. The way Greg crossed his arms while questioning Lisa, the dismissive smirk on Mark's face, and the fear in Maya's wide eyes. It was impossible not to notice the power imbalance. Two grown men in uniforms towering over a mother trying to protect her disabled daughter. It felt wrong, almost surreal. Jordan adjusted the camera angle slightly, ensuring the audio recorder picked up their voices clearly. "This is ridiculous," Jordan muttered under their breath, shaking their head. They'd seen situations like this before, people treating others poorly because of assumptions based on race, disability, or simply being different. But witnessing it firsthand made it hit harder. As Lisa handed over her ID, visibly frustrated but trying to stay composed, Jordan decided they couldn't just sit back and watch. Quietly, they pulled out their phone and opened a live streaming app. Within seconds, the feed went live, broadcasting the scene to social media platforms. Jordan held the phone steady, framing the officers and Maya's family in the shot. In a calm but firm voice, they narrated what was happening. "Hi, everyone. I'm at the local park right now, and something disturbing is unfolding. Two police officers are aggressively confronting a mother and her young daughter, who uses a wheelchair. Let me show you what's happening." The live stream quickly gained traction. Notifications pinged as viewers tuned in, commenting in real time and sharing the video across their own networks. Some expressed outrage immediately, while others asked questions, trying to understand the context. Jordan kept the commentary minimal, letting the footage speak for itself. The raw emotion on Lisa's face, the tears welling up in Maya's eyes, and the smug expressions of the officers told the story better than words ever could. Meanwhile, other parkgoers began noticing the cameras. A few started recording on their phones too, capturing different angles of the incident. One man even stepped closer to Jordan, whispering, "Are you streaming this? Good. Someone needs to document this." Jordan nodded silently, focusing on keeping the camera steady despite the growing tension in the air. Back at the center of the scene, the officers seemed oblivious to the growing audience. They continued pressing Lisa for answers, asking intrusive questions, and making snide remarks. At one point, Mark leaned down toward Maya, tapping the armrest of her wheelchair mockingly. "You sure this thing works?" he quipped, earning a sharp glare from Lisa. Maya shrunk further into her seat, clutching Snowflake like a lifeline. It wasn't until someone nearby shouted, "Hey, we're all watching you," that the officers paused. For the first time, they glanced around, realizing they weren't alone anymore. Dozens of eyes were on them, some angry, some confused, but all paying attention. And then one of them noticed Jordan's phone pointed directly at them, the small red light indicating the live stream still running. Greg straightened up, suddenly aware of the potential consequences of their actions. He exchanged a fleeting look with Mark, both men instinctively adjusting their posture. Their tones softened slightly as they tried to backtrack, attempting to justify their behavior to Lisa and anyone else listening. But it was too late. The damage was done. The world was watching, and nothing they said now could erase what had already been captured on camera. For Jordan, the moment felt surreal. What had started as a routine afternoon of filming had turned into something far bigger. A chance to shine a light on injustice and give a voice to those who might otherwise go unheard. As the officers fumbled through their explanations, Jordan knew this was only the beginning. The video would spark conversations, raise questions, and hopefully inspire change. But for now, all they could do was keep filming, ensuring the truth was seen and heard by as many people as possible. The confrontation continued to escalate, drawing more attention from the growing crowd of onlookers. Maya, overwhelmed by the situation, began to cry softly, her small frame trembling as she clutched her stuffed bunny tightly. Her tears tugged at the heartstrings of everyone watching, making the officer's behavior seem even crueler in contrast. Lisa knelt beside her daughter, wrapping an arm around her protectively while trying to shield her from the verbal barrage. Officer Greg, clearly frustrated that his authority was being questioned, demanded Lisa's full cooperation in a tone that bordered on threatening. "You need to answer our questions," he barked, leaning closer to her. "We're just doing our job here." But his words rang hollow, especially when paired with the sneer on his face and the dismissive way he glanced at Maya. It was obvious to everyone, except perhaps the officers themselves, that this wasn't about enforcing rules or keeping the peace. This was about power. Meanwhile, Officer Mark decided to take things further. He began circling the wheelchair, inspecting it as if looking for evidence of some hidden wrongdoing. "So, how long has she been using this thing?" he asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Does she really need it, or is it just convenient?" His comments were met with gasps from nearby spectators who couldn't believe what they were hearing. A young woman standing close by shook her head in disbelief and muttered loud enough for others to hear, "That's so messed up." Lisa's patience finally snapped. "Are you seriously questioning my child's disability?" She shot back, her voice rising with anger. Would you ask someone in a cast if their broken leg is real? Or accuse someone with asthma of faking it? My daughter uses this wheelchair because she needs it, not because it's convenient. Her words hung heavy in the air, silencing the officers momentarily. For a brief second, guilt flickered across Greg's face, but it vanished almost instantly, replaced by defensiveness. The tension reached a boiling point when Mark placed a hand on his holster, casually resting it there, as if to remind everyone of his authority. The gesture sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Parents pulled their children closer, and whispers turned into murmurs of disapproval. One man stepped forward slightly, his fists clenched at his sides. Hey, no one's threatening anyone here, he called out. Leave them alone. Others nodded in agreement, emboldened by his courage. Maya, sensing the hostility around her, buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Lisa rubbed her back gently, whispering reassurances despite her own rising frustration. It's okay, baby, she said softly. We're going to be fine. But inside, Lisa felt anything but fine. She knew the odds weren't in their favor, not against two armed officers determined to assert dominance over a defenseless family. As the standoff dragged on, Jordan's live stream continued capturing every painful moment. The comments section exploded with outrage. People from all over the country chimed in, sharing their support for Lisa and Maya, while condemning the officers' actions. This is disgusting, one viewer wrote. How can they treat a disabled child like this? Another added, I hope this goes viral so these cops are held accountable. The video had already amassed thousands of views, and hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #StopRacism began trending online. Back at the park, the officers seemed increasingly aware of the attention they were receiving. Greg glanced nervously at the growing number of phones pointed in their direction, while Mark shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado fading. Still, neither backed down entirely. They tried to justify their actions, claiming they were concerned about park regulations and public safety, though their explanations sounded weak and unconvincing. By now, the crowd had grown significantly. Some people recorded the scene on their phones, while others simply stood quietly, their presence serving as a silent protest against the injustice unfolding before them. An elderly man with a cane approached Lisa, offering her a kind smile. Don't let them bully you, he said softly. You're doing great. His words gave her a small measure of strength, reminding her that she wasn't alone. Despite the mounting pressure, the officers refused to de-escalate. Instead, they doubled down, insisting that Lisa provide more identification and explain why she and Maya were taking up space in the park. Each demand felt like another weight pressing down on Lisa, but she refused to give in. With her daughter clinging to her side and a sea of strangers rallying behind her, she stood her ground, determined not to let fear dictate her next move. Though the humiliation cut deep, Maya found solace in knowing that her mother was fighting for her, and that countless strangers were standing up for them too. In that, the moment Jordan stepped forward, holding up their phone and announcing the live stream, the dynamics of the situation shifted dramatically. This entire interaction is being recorded, and it's going live right now, Jordan declared loudly, ensuring their voice carried over the murmurs of the crowd. The officers froze mid-sentence, their faces flickering with a mix of confusion and alarm as they processed what was happening. For the first time since the confrontation began, they seemed unsure of themselves. Greg and Mark exchanged uneasy glances, suddenly aware that their actions were no longer confined to the park. Thousands of eyes, maybe even millions, were watching them in real time. Their earlier bravado crumbled under the weight of accountability. Greg cleared his throat awkwardly, attempting to soften his tone. Look, we're just doing our job here, he said, though his words lacked conviction. Mark, meanwhile, quickly removed his hand from his holster, realizing how threatening the gesture appeared on camera. Lisa noticed the change immediately. Though she still felt anger bubbling inside her, she also recognized an opportunity. With so many people witnessing the scene, She decided to speak directly to the growing audience. Turning slightly toward Jordan's phone, she addressed the viewers with quiet but fierce determination. "My name is Lisa, and this is my daughter, Maya. We came to the park today to enjoy a peaceful afternoon like any other family. Instead, we've been harassed, questioned, and humiliated, all because of who we are." Her words struck a chord with the online audience. Comments poured in faster than ever, flooding the live stream with messages of support. "Stay strong, Lisa." One viewer wrote, "You're doing amazing." Another added, "No child should have to go through this. #Justice for Maya." The hashtags continued to trend, spreading awareness far beyond the park's boundaries. Local news outlets picked up the story, sharing snippets of the live stream and amplifying the outrage. Meanwhile, the crowd at the park grew restless. Some people started clapping slowly, a rhythmic show of solidarity for Lisa and Maya. Others held up signs hastily scribbled on notebook paper: "Stop bullying disabled kids," and "Accountability now." A teenage girl stood near the edge of the group, tears streaming down her face as she watched Maya cry. She whispered to her friend, "How can anyone be so cruel to a kid?" The officers, visibly rattled, tried to regain control of the situation. Greg attempted to sound reasonable, addressing both Lisa and the crowd. "Listen, there's been a misunderstanding here," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're not trying to cause trouble, we're just following protocol." But his explanation fell flat. Protocol didn't justify mocking a disabled child or intimidating a mother simply enjoying time with her daughter. The crowd knew it, and so did the thousands watching online. Jordan kept the camera steady, zooming in occasionally to capture key moments. When Greg mentioned protocol, Jordan interjected calmly but firmly. "Protocol doesn't include questioning whether someone's disability is real or placing your hand on your weapon during a routine conversation." They said, their voice carrying authority despite its calmness. People deserve respect, especially children. The comment drew nods of agreement from the crowd and more supportive comments online. Someone in the chat tagged a prominent civil rights organization, urging them to investigate the incident. Within minutes, representatives from the organization responded, promising to look into the matter and offering legal support if needed. As the standoff dragged on, the officers realized they were losing ground. Every word they spoke was scrutinized, every movement analyzed. They tried to wrap things up quickly, telling Lisa they'd sort this out later and stepping back reluctantly. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The world had seen their behavior, and there would be consequences. For Lisa, the moment brought a strange mix of emotions. Relief washed over her knowing that the officers were finally backing off, but anger lingered at the thought of how much her daughter had endured. Maya, sensing the shift, peeked out from behind her stuffed bunny, her tear-streaked face searching for reassurance. Lisa hugged her tightly, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe now." The crowd erupted in applause as the officers retreated, their heads bowed in defeat. Strangers approached Lisa and Maya, offering hugs, kind words, and promises to stand with them. One woman handed Maya a flower, saying, "You're brave, sweetie. Never forget that." For the first time that day, Maya managed a small smile, clutching the flower alongside Snowflake. Within hours, the video of Maya and Lisa's ordeal at the park had gone viral, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Screenshots of the live stream were shared endlessly, accompanied by captions demanding justice. News outlets picked up the story, airing clips of the confrontation during their evening broadcasts. Talk show hosts dedicated segments to discussing the incident, inviting experts on disability rights and racial justice to weigh in. The hashtag Justice for Maya trended not only locally but nationally, drawing attention from politicians, activists, and celebrities alike. By morning, protests erupted outside the police department headquarters. Hundreds of people gathered, holding signs that read "Protect our children" and "End systemic racism now." Some carried pictures of Maya smiling in her wheelchair, turning her into a symbol of resilience and hope. Community leaders took turns addressing the crowd, urging them to channel their anger into meaningful action. "This isn't just about one family," one speaker declared passionately. "It's about every child, every parent, and every person who has ever been treated unfairly because of who they are." Lisa and Maya became reluctant yet powerful figures in the growing movement. Though overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight, Lisa agreed to speak publicly, knowing it was an opportunity to shed light on the issues she and her daughter faced daily. In interviews, she remained composed but firm, recounting the events in detail while emphasizing the need for systemic change. "What happened to us wasn't an isolated incident," she said during one interview. "It's part of a much bigger problem, one that won't go away unless we all stand together and demand better." Maya, though still processing everything, found comfort in the outpouring of love and support. Her classmates sent her drawings and letters, calling her brave and thanking her for inspiring others. Teachers organized discussions in schools about kindness and inclusion, using Maya's story as a starting point. Even strangers reached out, sending heartfelt messages and small gifts to lift her spirits. For a little girl who had spent years feeling different because of her disability, this wave of positivity was transformative. Behind the scenes, investigations into the officers' conduct began swiftly. Internal Affairs launched a formal inquiry, reviewing the footage and interviewing witnesses. Civil rights organizations filed complaints, pushing for transparency and accountability. Pressure mounted on city officials to address the systemic biases within the police force. Protesters demanded reforms, including mandatory training on interacting with disabled individuals and stricter policies against discriminatory behavior. But not everyone supported the outcry. Some defended the officers, claiming they were being unfairly targeted. Online comment sections turned into battlegrounds, with heated debates raging about privilege, authority, and justice. Despite the backlash, Lisa refused to engage with negativity. Instead, she focused on amplifying positive voices, those advocating for change rather than division. Jordan, meanwhile, continued documenting the aftermath. Their short film, initially intended to explore public spaces, evolved into something far more impactful. They titled it, "Who is Watching?" Weaving together footage of the park incident, protest scenes, and interviews with families affected by similar experiences. The film highlighted the importance of accountability and the role bystanders play in challenging injustice. Jordan worked closely with Lisa and Maya, ensuring their voices remained central to the narrative. As days turned into weeks, the momentum showed no signs of slowing down. Schools, community centers, and local governments hosted town hall meetings to discuss ways to create safer environments for marginalized groups. Artists painted murals honoring Maya and other children who had faced discrimination. A scholarship fund was established in Maya's name to support students with disabilities pursuing their dreams. Through it all, Maya began to heal. She returned to the park once, accompanied by her mother and a group of supporters. This time, instead of hostility, she was greeted with smiles and cheers. People hung banners on trees with messages like, "Welcome back, Maya," and "You belong here." As she rolled her wheelchair along the familiar path to the pond, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. The ducks quacked happily nearby, oblivious to the storm that had passed. But Maya knew. She knew she had made a difference, even if it was just by being herself. A brave, kind-hearted little girl who deserved nothing less than respect and love. Months later, the park where it all began looked different, brighter, somehow. The same ducks waddled along the pond's edge, and children laughed as they chased each other across the grass. But now, colorful banners hung from trees, bearing messages of hope and inclusion. "Everyone belongs here. Kindness matters. And justice starts with us." Maya returned to the park for the first time since that fateful day, her wheelchair rolling smoothly over newly paved paths designed to be more accessible. Her mother, Lisa, walked beside her, smiling softly as she watched her daughter take in the changes. The community had rallied around Maya and her family, transforming the park into a symbol of resilience and unity. Local artists painted murals on nearby walls, depicting scenes of diversity and harmony. One mural showed Maya sitting by the pond, surrounded by animals and smiling faces, a tribute to her courage and the movement she inspired. Strangers approached Lisa and Maya throughout the afternoon, thanking them for their bravery and sharing how their story had touched lives. "You've given us hope," one woman said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you." Jordan's documentary, Who is Watching, premiered at a local theater packed with supporters, activists, and families eager to see the finished film. The room buzzed with anticipation as the lights dimmed, and when the screen lit up, there was Maya, her laughter echoing through the speakers, her bright eyes capturing hearts. The film chronicled not just the incident, but also the wave of change it sparked, weaving together interviews, protest footage, and moments of quiet reflection. When the credits rolled, the audience erupted into applause, many wiping away tears. Jordan stood at the front, humbled by the response. "This isn't my story, it's ours," they said simply. "And it's proof that when we stand together, we can make a difference." For Maya, life slowly returned to normal, but it was a new kind of normal. She still loved watching ducks and sketching pictures, but now she carried herself with a quiet confidence. At school, her classmates treated her like a hero, often asking her to sign their notebooks or share stories about her experience. Teachers incorporated lessons on empathy and advocacy into their curriculum, using Maya's journey as an example of standing strong in the face of adversity. Even Snowflake, her beloved stuffed bunny, seemed prouder than ever, perched regally on her lap during class. Behind the scenes, real progress continued. Officer Greg and Officer Mark were formally disciplined after the investigation concluded. Both were stripped of their badges and suspended without pay. While some felt the punishment wasn't severe enough, others saw it as a step toward accountability. More importantly, the city implemented sweeping reforms within the police department, including mandatory training on disability awareness and implicit bias. Independent oversight committees were established to review complaints, ensuring transparency moving forward. Lisa remained active in advocacy work, joining forces with organizations dedicated to protecting marginalized communities. She traveled to conferences and workshops, sharing her story and urging others to speak out against injustice. Though the spotlight sometimes overwhelmed her, she never lost sight of why she kept going. For Maya, for every child who deserved to feel safe, and for a future free from fear. As the sun set over the park that evening, Maya sat by the pond once more, sketching a picture of the ducks. Lisa joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Do you remember the last time we were here?" Lisa asked gently. Maya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It was scary," she admitted, "but people helped us. They made it okay." Lisa kissed the top of her head, her heart swelling with pride. "That's right, sweetheart. And because of you, people are helping each other too. You showed everyone what it means to be brave." Maya smiled, adding the finishing touches to her drawing, a bright yellow sun shining down on the pond. For the first time in months, the weight of everything they'd endured felt lighter, replaced by a sense of hope. The scars of that day would always remain, but so would the love and strength they'd found in its aftermath. Together, they proved that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, and that sometimes the smallest voices could spark the biggest changes. The investigation into the officers' conduct moved quickly, driven by public pressure and the overwhelming evidence captured on camera. Internal affairs officials reviewed Jordan's footage frame by frame, analyzing every comment, gesture, and action. Witnesses from the park were interviewed, including Lisa, Maya, and several bystanders who had recorded their own videos. Each account painted the same picture: two officers abusing their authority, targeting a disabled child and her mother without cause. Officer Greg and Officer Mark were placed on administrative leave almost immediately, pending further review. Their names became synonymous with controversy, splashed across headlines, and discussed in heated debates online. Some defended them, arguing that they were simply doing their jobs under difficult circumstances. But the majority of voices condemned their behavior, calling it cruel, unnecessary, and emblematic of deeper issues within law enforcement. Civil rights organizations filed formal complaints, demanding not only disciplinary action against the officers, but also sweeping reforms to address systemic biases. As the days passed, more details emerged about the officers' histories. Records showed that both men had been involved in previous incidents where they were accused of using excessive force or displaying discriminatory attitudes. Complaints had been filed against them in the past, but none had resulted in serious consequences. Until now. This time, the sheer volume of outrage made ignoring the problem impossible. The police chief held a press conference, attempting to strike a balance between accountability and damage control. "We are committed to transparency and fairness," he said, standing behind a podium adorned with the department's logo. "These allegations are deeply troubling, and we will ensure a thorough investigation is conducted." He announced plans to implement new training programs focused on cultural sensitivity and interactions with disabled individuals. However, skeptics in the audience questioned whether these measures would lead to real change or simply serve as window dressing to appease critics. Meanwhile, protests continued outside the police station, growing larger and more organized. Community leaders coordinated marches, teach-ins, and rallies aimed at keeping the momentum alive. One event featured Maya and Lisa as honored guests, though Lisa insisted they attend not as victims, but as advocates for progress. Standing before a sea of supporters, Lisa spoke passionately about the need for empathy and understanding. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she said, clutching Maya's hand. "But if we keep pushing, keep speaking up, we can make the world safer for everyone. For our children, for people with disabilities, and for anyone who's ever felt invisible." Maya, still shy but emboldened by the love surrounding her, waved to the crowd, holding Snowflake close. Cheers erupted, echoing through the streets. For many, seeing Maya smile despite everything she'd endured was a reminder of why the fight mattered. While the officers awaited their fate, calls for justice extended beyond individual accountability. Activists pushed for broader policy changes, such as requiring body cameras for all officers, establishing independent oversight boards, and creating clear guidelines for handling situations involving vulnerable populations. Lawmakers began drafting legislation addressing these demands, spurred by the groundswell of public support. In the midst of this whirlwind, Jordan released a preview clip of their documentary, Who is Watching? The teaser went viral almost instantly, reigniting discussions about the role of technology in holding institutions accountable. Viewers praised Jordan's work, calling it a powerful tool for education and advocacy. Media outlets invited Jordan to appear on talk shows and panels, amplifying the message even further. Despite the strides being made, skepticism lingered among some activists. They worried that once the initial wave of attention faded, so too would the urgency for reform. "We've seen this cycle before," one advocate warned during a televised interview. "Outrage spikes after an incident, promises are made, and then nothing substantial changes. We can't let that happen this time." For Lisa and Maya, the journey was far from over. Though relieved by the steps being taken, they understood that true justice required sustained effort. As they returned home from another day of interviews and meetings, Lisa tucked Maya into bed, brushing her hair back gently. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. "And because of you, people are listening. That's how we start to fix things." Maya smiled sleepily, clutching her stuffed bunny. She didn't fully grasp the scope of what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore.